Okay, Simon. So we've read about your love of horse racing. I was a little bit surprised to see in your CV that you sent me that Hove Dogs was part of your misspent youth.
Well, it was part of the misspent youth. It wasn't far away from Shoreham by Sea where I grew up. It is actually a very good stadium, Hove Dogs. And I suppose we were just betting a lot at the time and wanted something to bet on and go out of a night. And we would often go over on the cheap side, the back straight, because again, didn't have much money. But the bookmakers, even though we're underage, would take our bets, but they wouldn't give you a ticket. So you go up to have whatever you want on trap 2 or 4 or whatever, and you say, boy pays. So it's quite humiliating, really. And everyone could hear it, and you just had to trust that if you backed the winner that he would pay you out. But he always did, this particular bookmaker. He was the one that we went for, because we knew that he would take our bets.
Down our way, it was always down the farmer. Talking of which, so you mentioned earlier that you'd done a bit of commentating at Point to Points.
Well, I did in the early days, and it was one of the reasons I auditioned or sent a demo tape in to SIS. Again, it was a right time, right place moment, because it was the launch of pictures into betting shops by SIS. That was around that time, 84, 85, and the guy that was in charge, George Irvine, felt that the commentaries were a little bit military, and he wanted to change it a bit, liven it up. Not quite as lively as Matt Chapman, but sensibly lively. And I was already working for the Sporting Life, and I'd done some some point to points. I remember the first point to point I did was Heathfield on an Easter Monday, and I was being mentored by a commentator called John Hickman, very nice man. And we were on top of the ice cream van, and they sort of put ladders, and that's where we're standing up there. And there weren't many runners. And John said, you can do a couple of races. So I got up to do my first race. I mean, frankly, I was in a mess. Already 5 runners or something. And anyway, the race started, and nothing came out. My mouth, I just absolutely struck dumb. And he gave me a big whack on the shoulder. Said, go on then. And away I went. So I was completely struck dumb on that first commentary, and I did others, and it's just a case of growing in confidence. And I did the demo. The demo tape was a problem actually, because I went to Plumpton, and in those days, we didn't have these tiny little recorders now, or your mobile phone. I had this big old clunky tape recorder that I was trying to trap into my coat, and went out to them, because I'm quite a shy person actually, and I went into the middle of the course and away from people, but the wind was so high, it was distorting the sound, so I had to go into the stand and do the commentary, do the demo tape, and people looking around at me as I was an idiot, and I felt very cowed about it, Anyway, I managed to get it done, they liked it, and I was taken on.
Now, when you were at school, were you quite studious? Did you leave with any qualifications?
I did well at O-levels because I had a good memory. I was good at 2 things at school. One was English, and the other was being conscientious. Every report said, oh, he's very conscientious, very boring. I was a very shy boy at school, very nervous, and I had a religious studies master that seemed to recognise this. And he told me that I was going to read the lesson in assembly. There was no question. I couldn't say I wasn't going to do it. I had to do it. He told me you are going to do it. And I think he was quite a clever man, because although I was absolutely terrified about it, I don't know how I got through it. I was a bit of a mess. And I'd had a little bit of a breakdown earlier on at school, at another school, a very strict teacher, and I'd been taken out of school for a while. I was still very shy, and this was in the secondary school, and reading out the lesson. And I think it just helped me grow in confidence a little bit. I was a pretty pathetic, I was very studious, very conscientious. And I'm still very conscientious about, preparing for race meetings, and, so I'm pretty boring like that, really.
So was a career in racing always on your mind?
Well, it was a dream, I suppose, but, I couldn't anticipate it. Through the secondary school, up to O-levels, I actually had an English teacher who was quite keen on racing and was surprised at my knowledge. And did the A levels, and A levels I grew increasingly disinterested in learning, more interested in taking a bit of time off to go to Fontwell, and then I noticed that there was a racing publishing company in my hometown of Shoreham-by-Sea, and I got in touch with them and started going in on Saturday mornings, and by the time I got to 18, there was a job waiting for me, and the company was called Furlong Press, and they produced a form book called Superform with inserts, rather like the old race form inserts every week that you put into your folder. And it was similar to race form, but it was different insofar as it was more of a ratings-based form book. So I went there at 18 and was there for 2 years. It was fantastic grounding, incredible, learning how to write about horses, learning how to study pedigrees, learning how to handicap. So that was amazing to get that job.
I'm fascinated to hear about Superform, because I once was the proud owner of a complete set from the 1974 book, which I managed to track down. I mean, what was it like in there? I imagine it was 2 or 3 chaps in a dusty little...
You're about right. It was run by a Scot called Kevin Gilroy, who lived in Shoreham-by-Sea.
Sponsored by Haig.
Yes.
The Haig Superform.
The Haig Races and Racehorses.
So I bought the annuals, I couldn't afford the loose leaf every week.
Yeah. So there was the loose leaf every week. There was a weekend card which covered most of the TV racing, and there was the Haig Races and Racehorses annual, which was the whole season.
Which is why I used to get
flat or jumps. I've got quite a few at home as well. It was a very humble place to work in a way, because it was just a shop, a terrace shop, just round the corner from Shoreham High Street. And on the ground floor was the printing area, and the guy that was the printer was Kevin's father-in-law, who was a very temperamental man, but so was the printing press as well. And the air was absolutely blue, you know. And these were very rudimentary days, because upstairs when we did the writing, and we used dictaphones, and the girls next door, a couple of girls, would type in the comments and everything. Eventually we then went on to, or Kevin wanted to go onto computers, or try to introduce some computerization to it. Very early days of this. And the computer program kept busting. We were having to put the index of horses' names and ratings manually, and it kept crashing, and we'd lose all the data and have to start again. Can you imagine how frustrating all those horses, you've got to do, and it just got a bit fraught after a while, and we had a bit of a blow up, and I fell out with him, and after 2 years I left.
And got a job with Sporting Life?
No, I had about 18 months of relative unemployment. I worked in a pub for 3 nights a week, and I set up a little business which I called Racecourse Form Services, which was writing comments about the runners in the race card. And I mean, this will sound archaic. I had to go into Brighton to a telex company to get a telex of all the runners for the 4-day declarations. Go home, type up comments for every horse. It could be 120, 140 horses. Do that, type it up, and then deliver it myself to the printers, either at Reigate for the southern courses, and I had a few courses in the Midlands which I eventually worked for as well on their race cards, or to a place, Trowbridge in Wiltshire. So I drove all the way from Shoreham to Trowbridge just to deliver the copies. No delivery services or anything like that. So, and that kept my head above water for a bit. And then the Racing Post was about to be launched, and it doubled the number of jobs in journalism. And with my background for Superform, I got interviews for both of them, and I wasn't really in a position to say no to the first one that offered a job. I subsequently heard that the Racing Post probably would have taken me on, but the Sporting Life said yes, specifically the Sporting Life Weekender, and fantastic breakthrough.
And those were the days when the journalists were sent to the races.
They were. I mean, it was the job on the Weekender is just, it was ridiculous. It was the time when the print unions were very powerful, and the job was 3 days a week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 8 weeks holiday a year, and I started on the same day as Mike Cattermole and Tony Elves, who both remain very good friends, and we spent the rest of the week going racing, really. But eventually, we were given more work on the sporting life, including outside racecourse reporting, and that was a job I absolutely loved. And the sporting life would send, 2 people to most racecourses, most race meetings, and that'd be a close-up man, comments on how the horses ran, and a reporter, and I would do both. And I think the Racing Post, to be honest, are missing a trick, because by not sending reporters out to many meetings, I think they miss stories. I think those reporters who end up just speaking to trainers on the phone don't make such good contacts as perhaps we made then. And it's much easier to talk to people on the course rather than try and chase them at the end of a phone line. And you just go up to them and chat, and it's amazing the little snippets that you can get. And but then on the other hand, the Sporting Life had a lot of space. It was a broadsheet paper, and you'd ring up the sub-editor before racing and say, what do you want today? You know, I'm here at Wolverhampton, 6 races. And he'd say, usually it'd be like, oh, give me 24 and 8. 24 paragraphs and 8 paragraphs. So 32 paragraphs. And you think, how on earth am I going to fill that 6 poor races at Wolverhampton? But it was amazing. You know, if you chatted to people, if you talked to the winning owner, you know, he might have bred the horse as well, and little stories behind it. There was usually something to write about.
Was there anybody in those early days that was like a mentor that sort of taught you how to race read, or give you any sort of leg up? You know, I don't mean a leg up in career, but this leg up in understanding or what to look for.
Well, I just think it is you know, as I said earlier, I think racing is such a slow burn, and you just keep on learning. But I mean, to me, you know, Jeff Lester was a great help to me, and so we had Steve Taylor, we had David Ashforth, Alistair Down, all excellent writers. And so, you know, obviously I read them and tried to develop your own. So it's a bit like when I started out commentating, you know, you get influenced by other people. I was quite influenced by, I've been lucky enough to go to Australia, and I heard some of the callers out there, and I was quite influenced by them. I thought they're fantastic. Peter O'Sullivan, obviously, when I was growing up. And then it's a case of trying to develop your own style, whether it be a commentary or writing. And so you're kind of learning on the job a little bit. Jeff Lester was particularly good to me because I was commentating and working for the Sporting Life at the same time, and he would send me to courses where I was commentating to do the reports. So that made a huge difference. It meant I had some hard days, long days. I wouldn't be able to do it now, but you know, he was very kind in that respect.
And there's a lot of big personalities in the press rooms in those days. Were you sort of intimidated at all?
There were a lot of senior journalists, and not all of them would speak to you.
Did you sit in any of their seats?
Well, you have to be very careful about that, you know, if they've been sitting there for 30 years. But again, completely different. The journalists would always go off and have a drink before racing. Jeff Lester and George Henner, I always remember they went off to have a drink before racing, and the whole, I mean, when I joined the Sporting Life, it was one big floor, and you know, there was smoke everywhere. Yeah, everyone was smoking, and we mentioned Man on the Spot earlier. Well, they would disappear midway through the day down to the pub on the ground floor of the Mirror building, and sort of totter back 2 hours later to write their copy.
That's why I give my money.
I was quite shocked, you know. And I remember when I joined the Sporting Life, I was about 10 stone, 21 years old, whatever, 23 years old. And I had a beer belly in 3 weeks, you know, because it's just the whole drinking and smoking culture, you know. And nowadays, you know, obviously things have changed dramatically.